That a team of American negotiators are scheduled to arrive in Moscow next week for talks on ending the war in Ukraine. He said a controversial 28-point peace plan could form the basis for an agreement, but also claimed there was no point signing any kind of deal with the Ukrainian government because Russia regarded it as illegitimate.
As I understand, they decided that all 28 points should be grouped into 4 separate components. We received all this information. In general, we agree that the US-backed peace plan can be used as a basis for future agreements. But it would be impolite on my part to speak about any final versions, because there are none. Ukrainian troops must withdraw from the territories they hold, and then the fighting can cease. If they don't leave, then we shall achieve this by armed means.
But before anything can happen, Ukrainian troops must withdraw from those territories, and only for the fighting to cease. And if they don't, then we will continue to achieve this by armed means. In other words, he is willing at the moment to carry on fighting. And secondly, as you pointed out, he still considers the Ukrainian government to be illegitimate. Therefore, he can't have any straightforward face-to-face negotiations, government to government. In other words, constant sort of roadblocks to any kind of progress, which means that for all the diplomacy that we've just seen over the last few weeks, what happens next week when the Americans sit down with the Russians, the bar is high for progress.
In terms of trying to make an assessment of where this goes, of course, we had seen in the last 7 days a huge amount of pressure on President Zelensky, even the suggestion that perhaps by the end of this week he would go to the US and sign some sort of deal. But you then get back to the absolute basics of what we heard today, which is trying to get Vladimir Putin on board. So if the answer still remains from Moscow, no, where does this go?
Well, the Ukrainians are trying to send as many positive signals as they possibly can to try and show that they're still in this game. So President Zelensky today has been very visible on social media, wishing President Trump a happy Thanksgiving in the United States. The head of the presidential office, Andriy Yermak, has been sort of putting out on social media that the Ukrainians and the Americans are still talking, they're making a lot of remains this. At the moment, we see no evidence yet that the Russians are willing to stop fighting. President Putin said today, he said it very explicitly, that look, the speed of our advances increases considerably, quote, month by month the rate in which we return of our territories increases. He wants to keep fighting.
That, of course.
Donald Trump's recent statement about Ukraine made it clear that he believes no longer has the power to dedicate the terms for ending the war. According to Trump, the United States has prepared a peace plan that aims to stop the
ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
But this plan will not be easy for Ukraine to accept.
He emphasized that the war has become extremely destructive
and should never have started in the first place. Trump stated that a moment will come when President
Volodymyr Zelensky
will have to approve the US-based plan whether he likes it or not, because Ukraine is running out of options on the battlefield. In Trump's view, Ukraine is no longer in a position to demand what it wants. Instead, it must deal with the reality of its weakened military and increasing international pressure to end the fighting. He further said that if Ukraine refuses to accept the plan, then the only alternative is to continue the war, and the path will only bring more destruction and suffering our country. The Trump said. The Ukraine president Trump's message suggested that the USA peace proposal is not designed around Ukraine's full wish but around the hard facts of power,
superiority and goal stability.
He hinted that compromise is unavoidable because every war alternative ends that some form of negotiate settlement, no matter how difficult or painful it may be. His comments that
Zelensky
would have to accept something implies the Ukraine from need to give up certain demands or make conscious in order to stop the war. Trump also indicated that the United States has its own strategy, interests, and those interests will shape the final peace arrangement. Will shape the final peace agreement more than Ukraine's performance. The overall meanings of Trump's statement is that the situation has reached a point where thought decision are the only path to ending the conflict, and whether Ukraine like the terms or not, it will
eventually
eventually have to choose peace over continued warfare. Donald Trump's recent statement about Ukraine made it clear that he believes no longer has the power to dictate the terms for ending the war. According to Trump, the United States has prepared a peace plan that aims to stop the
ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
but this plan will not be easy for Ukraine to accept.
He emphasized that the war has become extremely destructive
And